been married for quite a while. Got a bunch of kids doing faith in style. They'll tell you that you're awesome and you're not alone. So let's start the show. New Catholics could be so much fun. Greg and Jennifer and how faith is done. Screwing up and trying and forgiving. Adventures in imperfect living. Adventures in imperfect living.
Hey, greetings, folks. I'm Greg Willits from RosaryArmy.com.
And I'm Jennifer Willits, his wife.
Welcome to another what will probably be a jam-packed program. We've got lots of stuff to talk about. Sugar fixes that's on the list. Lots of movie talk. Lots of movie suggestions after last week's program, which was kind of interesting to see all the feedback. I did not expect your little mention of a couple movies getting that kind of feedback. Plus, we're going to talk some prayer tips and want to talk a little bit about what is wisdom.
Oh, I like that. I like wisdom. But I think we just need to go ahead and get the elephant out of the room now. My hair is different. And only if you're watching this video can you appreciate the change.
Is that the elephant in the room? Your hair... I mean, listen, honey, your hair changes fairly frequently. Your hair is a regular topic of conversation.
It is. I'm not even kidding.
So it is.
He's not lying.
It's very curly today, more curly than normal.
Yes.
And
I'm excited about these new curls.
So you're naturally curly.
Yes.
You do straighten your hair sometimes.
Yes, because I like to play.
You have a YouTube video that has had over 600, maybe 650,000 views of how you straightened and styled your silver hair, and then shortly after that, you started going curly. We've talked about this many times, but getting the mane under control requires you to go to a specialist hair person, because not everyone. You can't just go into a hair salon and say,
"No,
take care of my hair," and they'll butcher your curls or something.
Well, right, and this is an
says.
ongoing headache for a lot of people who have naturally very curly hair. They just assume when it's time to get a haircut, they can go to any salon and just say, "Hey, I have curly hair. Will you cut it?" And most stylists who go through a typical beauty school and they're learning how to cut hair, they cut all hair the same way, regardless of what you have. They're going to wet it, straighten it, cut it, and then let it boing up, and whatever happens, happens. But that never works for people with naturally curly hair. They really do require a very different style. You have to cut their hair when it's dry and in its naturally curly state, and you literally cut one curl at a time so you get a nice overall shape of hair.
Can you imagine being a bald man in a
How
house?
freeing that must be.
No. And a bald man in a house where this is a regular topic of discussion, and the practice of just, this is God stretching me and helping me grow in patience. And so you got your hair, you went to a stylist.
Yes.
Can we just cut? Because I want to talk about wisdom and I want to talk about patience.
Well, the wisdom here is that you need to research a master curly hair stylist if you have curly hair, and just go there. Don't go to a regular salon down the street.
Your hair looks lovely.
You have to go to the right place, and then you'll have a much better result.
So let me just ask, because you've gone, I can't believe I'm going to ask a question, I'm going to prolong this.
The
just,
topic.
Just answer it quickly.
Yes, I will.
So you've gone to someone in the past. That person was expensive, and so you didn't go very often. You went to a new person for the first time yesterday. Did she put different product in your hair to make it more curly? Why is it springier today?
It's always how you dry it. And she was the most gentle I've ever seen a person dry my hair. It was like she was barely moving the curls and just being diffused hot air, and it protected the curls and it got rid of frizz.
Yeah, I could tell. There's
ladies,
a lot less frizz.
Like, that's a big thing. It's like, oh, my hair's so frizzy, I can't do anything.
Well, I don't know. In the video right now, I can see it showing up. There's a little bit.
Those are flyaways. That's different.
Yeah,
that's different. Just leave it.
I mean, I know a thing or two about frizz. Says the guy with I have like a few strands over here.
See, frizz is an issue for you too. You could have beard frizz.
So I'm going to start going to an old man beard specialist. So
there you go.
This is literally the first cup of coffee I had today. Much later cup of coffee, and it's 11 o'clock in the morning. It's crazy that we waited this long. I'm for years always been, as soon as you wake up, the first thing you do, go to the bathroom, make coffee, and then you go brush your teeth and do whatever while the coffee's being made. I don't know how this got into my YouTube algorithm. A guy named Andrew Huberman, who's a professor. He's a doctor of neuroscience and something else at Stanford University. And he's gotten into social media stuff over the last few years. And he's looks like he's probably our age, but he is.
He's a big guy.
He looks like he's in much better health than we are. And the way that I stumbled upon him was actually a couple of other videos from people talking about how they were trying to follow Dr. Huberman's protocol for their days, how they get started in the morning, the first things they do, what they do throughout the course of the day. And what was interesting was some of the things that he recommended, I felt like I was relatively close to already doing, but not in the right order and not at the level of intensity. So coffee, for example, but he just said wait 90 minutes after you've been awake before you have coffee. Well, I've been up much longer than that, just been very busy preparing for the show, and so I didn't get a chance to sit down and have my cup of coffee until just now. And let me tell you,
Does it taste amazing?
Delayed gratification is sometimes the best,
But Greg showed me this video.
Well, one of the videos, there's a zillion of them out there. It's Huberman Lab, I think .com, but if you search for Huberman Lab, you're going to go down a rabbit trail.
The science behind his videos is amazing. It's a little hard to follow at times. It's a lot to absorb, but you can't deny that he's just showing you common sense. This is what the body will do. If you do this, the body's going to react this way. If you put this kind of food in at this time of day, your body's going to do this. And how what we put into our mouths has the biggest impact on how we will feel and the kind of behaviors we have throughout the day. It's like we don't even realize what we're doing to ourselves half the time. We think we're doing something good. We think we understand what our body's asking us for. And we think, well, I'm sleepy, therefore I should have coffee to wake me up. It seems very logical. In fact, that's what we've been doing for years, was interpreting our signals that way. Not until we saw this one video, which is the reason why you are now. And now I am doing the same thing. I'm delaying that first cup of coffee for at least 90 minutes after waking.
Well, there's a few other things that he recommends, and I've done it for like the last 3 days, so I'm now an expert at it, and I can speak about it on a podcast that will go out to thousands of people and now be seen on YouTube as well. Thank you for subscribing, liking, and sharing this video with other people. But Dr. Huberman, some of the suggestions that he said was, for example, when you get up, within the first hour, get exposure to sunlight. Now, as someone who has struggled for most of my life with various levels of depression and anxiety, I have struggled in recent years feeling like I've made great strides in healing and improvement, but kind of in the back of my head knowing that there was something else, most likely with food and exercise, that I could be doing to improve it. Now, I don't mind dieting and I don't mind exercising if I have a viable plan that is scientifically proven and I don't feel like an experimental guinea pig. I don't particularly like that. I don't like trying to do whatever the latest fad diet is because it's going to pass relatively quickly. But if I can see some compelling scientific evidence that's going to back it up. So, for example, when I have lifted weights in the past, when I followed I've thought about this just recently as well. There were 2 books that I've gotten that I thought were going to be very similar. The last one, I don't even remember the name of it, but there was one that I bought several years ago that was like, Feed the Muscle, Burn the Fat or something like that. Yeah. That one was actually quite good. That was scientifically based. The food prep was relatively common sense, and the exercise was just do these things 3 days a week. And I did that for a 3-month period, and I did go down some pant sizes. I felt overall better. My energy level was higher. And so I appreciate those kinds of things. Whereas this other book, I think I never went full into it because I got to a certain point in the book where I went, I don't know if I buy into it completely, what the person was saying. Whereas with this, I haven't really gotten into what Dr. Huberman says in regards to sugar elimination and that kind of thing. Just coincidentally, we've seen some sugar-related movies recently. But what he says in the morning protocol is when you wake up, and I'm not going to explain the science, and I don't think we should. When you wake up, get exposure to sunlight, direct sunlight, within the first hour, 5 to 10 minutes if it's sunny outside. If you're in the dead of winter, if you're in Norway and there's no sun out, then get longer periods of exposure outside. The UV rays are still breaking through the clouds. And so like even this morning, it was raining when I got up, drizzling, and I went ahead and I went for a walk outside. And so also trying to get some exercise in the morning and follow that by, and this is what I think freaks out a lot of people, a cold shower or cold exposure of some sort. And there was scientific, when he explained the scientific basis for that, all these things, I'm actually doing more for my mental health than I am for any weight loss that might come about, because I really feel like I'm at a plateau, and I have been for a while. I feel like I'm still making great progress with my therapist, but I want to feel happy as my default versus as an occasional treat. And that's kind of been how it's been for a long time. And so if I can do things that for example, the cold showers, and he showed the scientific evidence in what it's done. Some people, like they told a story of one guy who was a cocaine addict who was able to get off of cocaine by doing these cold immersion baths, which I'm not going to do those kinds of things, at least not anytime soon. But taking a quick 3-minute cold shower, what it does is it when your external outside temperature goes down, your internal will heat up, and it starts doing other things, and it starts shooting off dopamine. And I've had scientific tests show my dopamine levels incredibly low, and the things that provide dopamine for me. And so my motivation and the things that I get excited by and all those kinds of things are very low. So I'm willing to make these kinds of changes. And the other thing that he typically does intermittent fasting until noon. And I have done intermittent fasting, and I kind of enjoy it because I don't have to think. It's when the intermittent fast ends, then for lunch, it basically eat a protein, eat vegetable. That's the main first meal should be that. But then I haven't figured out, well, what do I do after that? What are ways that I can fuel myself in a way that's not going to break the bank? Because all these non-sugar diets that we look at, it's like basically eat all the meat you can and all the vegetables and all organic too. It's like, well, we don't really have access to a lot of that kind of stuff, and if we did, it's very expensive. So, but I could do this other part, right? So you do what you can, and then you hope to build on it over time. So
yeah. Well, the good news is we don't have to do this for like 8 people. Like our family size is really smaller these days, and there would only really be like 3 of us who would be wanting to do this. And so I don't think the meat costs are going to be as bad as you might think. And so I'm very willing to try, but it immediately points to what's in your pantry. And so you have to face what you've stocked the house with, and then you start realizing I have a lot of unhealthy things in here that's causing a lot of temptation. What if we just stopped buying those things and just put better things in there, like just the stuff off these healthier diets? So when you're ready to have that meal, everything in there is safe.
And we've seen a couple of examples out in the field recently of the negative impacts of sugar. I don't feel like we're terrible with straight sugar. Mm-hmm. The holidays just happened. We ate a lot of cookies. We had a lot of chocolate around. I'm almost feeling like I want to get it out of me a little bit. Mm-hmm. But then we go to a parish that does a wonderful, wonderful breakfast and our family breakfast and religious education after Mass on Sunday mornings. And it's hosted by different groups. Well, normally there's eggs and that kind of thing, but it was kind of funny. This past week we go, and literally it was bagels and donut holes and just I don't know if there was protein available to us that day. And it's like, oh no, if you want health, and there's some sugary fruit down there and a syrup if you want that. It came out of a can, that kind of thing. But you pointed out in the middle of this that it was one of the loudest family religious education sessions, just because there's kids just hyped up on donuts and sugar and you just see it. I mean, even when I remember when my niece, who's now 40, when she was a baby, I took her to a movie, because she's like 12 years younger than me. So when I was 16, 17, she's old enough. I took her to go see Snow White, and we bought some sweet tarts and got home, and her mom was like, no more.
do not
give my daughter, because it's like great uncle Uncle Greg, fun Uncle Greg took Abby to the movie, and Abby's like woohoo. And by the time we got home, she was loopy. But then you saw something at school this week, and
our school really tries to subscribe to healthy eating. In fact, at the high school level, at the academy that we go to, health is one of the classes, and it's all trying to inform the students about this more holistic way of eating, more like Whole30, just just to go ahead and get the children to learn the whys of why sugar is so bad when what it does to you is like, and a lot of the grains that are genetically modified or just really unhealthy. So they do its fair share in trying to have the children really understand good, healthy diet so they can make better choices. But on Valentine's Day and a few other times of year that appear on the school calendar, they do relax the sugar restriction and they allow some Valentine's exchanges to happen from student to student that can involve candy. But they also say, but you don't have to do this. This is optional. Do not feel like you can just write a note. They're trying to give non-sugar options, but they're largely ignored by the students. But this particular Valentine's Day that has just recently passed us by, the administration decided to reward the middle schoolers with a hot chocolate cafe in the morning with a bowl of marshmallows and several cans of whipped cream if they wanted to add to their already sugared up, hot cocoa mix. And so they had like 3 layers of sugar that they can now add and make themselves. And I was serving these students like, here you go. Here's your. And I'm thinking,
putting on the whipped cream on top.
We have language arts in just a few minutes. How is this all going to play out? By the time that class starts, all of this intense rush of sugar is going to flood into their systems. And let me tell you, that first class, that first hour after those middle schoolers had all that sugar, they could not sit still in their chairs. One kid was just like constantly banging, and he was saying, I have all this extra energy and I have to get it out somehow. And it was annoying the other children. They're like, yeah, but stop making noise. Like, don't hit the desk. Like, run your finger through your hair or do something that's silent because that's annoying me. This is how they're talking to each other in the classroom.
And I will kill you.
It's like, I have no patience for you.
At the Catholic school.
I mean, so
he did not say that.
No. The attitude, they had no patience for one another. They were quicker to irritation. They could not be still, and all this like erratic behavior. They were talking back to the teacher more than they ever. I mean, it was crazy. All the negative effects of just hot cocoa with marshmallows and whipped cream. Like, note to self. Like, and we were saying it was a reward. I really thought like we just sort of, gave them kind of like this toxic drink that had a terrible effect. So yeah, we really need to seriously reevaluate our reward system, that we think sugar, ice cream, cookies, cakes, pies are a reward for some kind of celebration, and then look at the output of our behavior is just terrible.
And even my oldest sister, she and her husband, who are in their mid-60s now, they have been kind of off sugar for a few years now, and they look great. They're doing better than they had in years. And so, I mean, it gets in my head. I just don't know how feasible it is. I'm curious, but I'm also discouraged by the learning curve to be able to start doing something along those lines and to actually find foods. And I'm gonna, it's not gonna require us to be cooking all the time. To do stuff, so.
That's the other side of it. You realize you're going to have to ramp up your food prep in order to achieve healthier eating.
So I wanted to give a little bit of an update on School of Mary, and particularly I had mentioned several weeks ago that we were hoping that starting on February 20th that we could sort of do our first pilot group of preparation for total consecration to Jesus through Mary according to St. Louis Marie de Montfort. It begins on the 20th. It begins our 20th anniversary consecration personally, and we're not going to be able to do that live or do it with the group like we thought, just because of so many great things that are happening behind the scenes as we are still building out that foundation. Working right now with an organization, or we haven't signed a contract yet, but we're super close to start building out what's going to be, I think, an enormously incredible learning management system that is also a community, and it will help us to be able to build out a school, truly a school. It's a greater vision than even we had at the beginning of the conversation last year of School of Mary. But that process is going to take, we've been told, between 12 and 16 weeks. And so we want to do things right. We don't want to be rushing things. Anytime we rush, then we kind of put out the bare minimum. And really, we believe that what we are trying to do for Jesus through Mary deserves our very best. And so thank you in advance for your patience on that. We will still be doing our renewal, But we may even still be recording some of the stuff, but we're going to be sharing that later on with you. So thank you for your patience. And if you're waiting for some news about that, it's still coming. We're absolutely still working on it. So many great things are happening, but it's just not yet. So please keep praying for the School of Mary initiative. I think it's going to be worth the wait.
Actually, I had this idea the other day about building a school. Like, we have seen schools physically be built, the real brick and mortar schools down the road from us. In the beginning, it was just kind of raw land. Then the land had to be surveyed. And then eventually they had to clear it, and then they had to break ground. And then within 4 to 6 months, it was built. I think what's happening with School of Mary is actually very similar. We're surveying, make sure we have the right contractors involved before we can break ground. So we're right in between those two moments of completing the surveying and then breaking ground in a virtual school setting. And then it's going to take months to build so that this virtual school can exist appropriately.
And at some point, teenagers are going to show up and drink at night and put graffiti on the exposed walls while it's still under construction. That's kind of the thing that's expected next. But we're just doing so much prayer right now and discernment over the best next steps. And again, as we are approaching into the Lenten season, if you didn't have a chance to support Rosary Army during our giving campaign during Advent, we still really do need your help. And if you can make a donation today at rosaryarmy.com/donate, it would go a very long way in helping us in these plans that we are trying to develop and all of the different work that we're doing for God's kingdom here on earth. How's your prayer life going lately?
It's going great, but I admit it seems to be a bit lacking in between Sundays. Like on Sunday, I feel like I've got great prayer practices there. But
can I just say something real quick?
Yeah.
You just said in between Sundays. My first apartment, that rinky-dink place in Cincinnati on Silverton Avenue that I rented for a couple of years, $250 a month rent. It was directly across the street from my apartment building. It had four apartments in the building. There was a parking lot, long parking lot, and then on the other side of the parking lot there was a bar. And it was a heavy metal rock bar. And I did not know it was a heavy metal rock bar when I rented the apartment. I discovered it on my first night in the apartment when I was trying to go to sleep after getting off of a shift waiting tables. And it was 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm just hearing, dugga, 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 ragga, 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 dugga. So, but that bar was called Never on Sundays.
Oh, okay.
Guess what was one of the busiest days of the week for them? Sunday. They were open every night, never on Sundays. So when you said in between Sundays, I'm like,
between Sundays,
never on Sundays.
So yes, I'm still faithful with praying the rosary, but I have found that what's happening in this particular season of my life is that I'm not able to just sort of sit still in my inner room to pray a rosary. They seem to be a little bit more on the go. I find myself in a car more having to pray a rosary in that particular situation. And I got to tell you, that is not my favorite way. I am more distracted, obviously, with the task of driving safely, maintaining my speed, because I'm still very diligent about not speeding, not even 3 miles over the speed limit. I am very, very strict with myself on this. And sometimes praying the rosary in that setting is a little tougher. But I do want to share something with you because I actually discovered this somewhat recently, and maybe you already have, and I'm late to the party on this one. That's totally fine, but just in case, I'm going to share it with you because maybe this is you. Maybe you need this kind of help. Maybe you're in the car a lot and you don't always have a drive-friendly rosary that you can pray with. I know you're pretty good about having a 1-decade knotted ring that you keep near your drive shaft or your gear shifter. Yeah. That is perfect because it's not overly tangly and it isn't a risk near your driving hands and all that. I don't have that in the van.
I can make you one.
I know, and I keep forgetting to ask you to do that for me, but in the absence...
I'm looking around. I literally started looking around. Where's my twine? Where's my twine? I'm going to do it right now.
I appreciate that. That's very sweet. But in the absence of having a physical drive-safe rosary option, and maybe you don't have access to a rosary audio, or maybe you don't want to, because that's the other side of it. You don't always want to hear it. You just want to maintain a certain level of quiet in the car.
Let me say, I can't stand listening to Rosary Army's audio on the app or at rosaryarmy.com/audio.
Greg, how dare you say that?
I can't stand listening to
That's
it.
not going to help market the product. You just now saying it's
I'm just
terrible.
saying. No, I didn't say it's terrible. I said I can't stand listening to it.
And why?
Because it's us.
Because you can't pray with yourself.
Because
That's a little weird. You try doing that.
I can't pray.
To Greg. Audio
or with Greg.
Virtual Greg
Yeah.
and real Greg together.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Now,
okay.
you might enjoy that, though.
Right. Yes. And many people actually have had very nice things to say about our recording because we have a good pacing and all that. But I don't want to derail what I'm about to share with you right now. So I'm driving and I just have my hands on the steering wheel. And many times when I've tried just to pray a rosary when I'm alone, I find that it's very easy to lose track of how many Hail Marys I've said. It's very difficult for me to use my hands in the right way where I realize, okay, is this 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or is this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? I can't tell what increment of 5 I'm on based on what hand I've decided to be my counter hand. And it's just easy to lose track. And so some Hail Marys, will go up to 15. I go based on time. It's how can I know for sure what I'm doing? And then it just occurred to me.
This is the same problem as when I'm mowing the grass, by the way. I mean, I don't know how many 15 and 20 Hail Mary decades I prayed.
Right. Well, this isn't going to help because you have to have 2 hands on the mower,
well,
right?
that's why I made a lawnmower rosary.
Okay, that's true.
I made a knotted rosary that dangles from and I could hold that.
Okay.
You knotted rosaries could be applied. I have a knotted rosary in the shower, literally. A little
right,
decade.
Now, we'll get to that one. Okay. I have my thoughts on that one.
I think it's great.
Okay, now, in the car, and you just have your hands, what I've decided to do is most of us can drive very comfortably and safely with just one hand on the steering wheel. And so when you are in a place where you can safely drive with one hand, like on the highway, no one's around you, I have my defensive driving hand, the 12 o'clock position on the steering wheel. So my left hand is free and it can rest on my thigh very easily. So if my hand is on my thigh, that's the first 5. And then when I'm ready to go 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I put it on the wheel in the 10 and 2 position. Okay. Then I know that's 6 through 10. And so that keeps me mentally anchored at, okay, if it's on my thigh, I'm still approaching the rosary, the Hail Marys of 1 through 5. Anyway, right. You get what I'm saying. And it works great because if I ever drift mentally, I just got to look for where my left hand is. Oh, yeah, I'm still inside this decade. This is great.
All right. We totally want to hear from you. What are your creative ways of praying the rosary? Do you have tricks? Now, like I said, I actually do have a little knotted rosary that I put on the handle in the shower. There's a video that's available on Rosary Army's YouTube channel that I did a few years ago. It's like 10 ways of praying the rosary every day, and gave a lot of different suggestions for doing that. But send us some feedback if you want feedback at rosary, or no, excuse me, everything's mixed up right now. Send it to feedback@gregandjennifer.com. We'll still get it.
Yes.
Or if you want to record video feedback, you can actually upload that and send that to us now. I figured out how to do that after last week's show. You can go to rosaryarmy.com.weshare.com, and there's a form right there where you can upload a video of yourself that you record on your phone. And
we share or we transfer?
We transfer. That's what I said. rosaryarmy.com.wetransfer. I'm saying it all. rosaryarmy.wetransfer.com. It'll be there on the screen.
Yes,
I'll put it in the show notes if you're listening to this in the audio podcast.
Okay. Now, don't worry about this. I have another exciting prayer tip
that
I want to share. But unfortunately, this is not for men. And it's also not for half the women. So it's really just for a very small group of people.
Is this for like menopausal women? Premenopausal women?
This is for women, Catholic women, who participate in the practice of veiling at Mass. Okay. It's just for those women. But I have to share it because it's really cool. And maybe you'll want to start, if you're a woman and you're on the fence about should I veil, should I not veil, maybe this will help you want to veil because it's really cool. First of all, you need to know or be familiar with the term, this was used in the Old Testament, the tent of meeting. Greg, do you know what the tent of meeting is in terms of the time of Moses?
Yeah.
And so it's this large, basically a tent that could be deconstructed and reconstructed because the Israelites were moving. And the tent of meeting was where Moses would go in and have his encounter with God. it's it's very enclosed, very private, very intimate. So that idea of the tent of meeting, because of its phrasing is so unique, it just stuck with me. And so set that aside, tent of meeting, okay? Now, I want you to, think about being in Mass and imagine, having, women wear their veils at Mass. And so as I'm approaching the communion rail to receive our Eucharistic Lord, and I receive Christ in that moment, and then I am walking back to the pew to sort of sit with this awesome reality that I have just had a powerful encounter with Christ. And then I realized I had my veil with me. And if I kind of close it in front of me, like lift it up and bring
this is
it.
once you're back at the pew.
Yes, right after I just received Jesus in the Eucharist. And I bring the veil cloth over my eyes and hold it up with my prayer hands. I've, in a sense, enclosed myself in a type of tent where I am meeting Christ. And I feel like I'm living out what Matthew 6 was saying about go into your inner room and pray. That's what Christ said. When you pray, do this. Go close the door. Be in private. Be in this intimate little space. And it is such a cool thing. I'm telling you, there is no distraction. You are praying intensely. You're just being with Jesus in this little tent of a veil. And it's just the greatest thing. It's one of my favorite times of the Mass.
And the great thing is what's interesting is listening to you. You're not even realizing that 2 years ago you couldn't have done that.
Yeah, I know.
Because, and this is not a sales pitch on the traditional Latin Mass versus the Novus Ordo, but the parishes that we've gone to in the past, there's oftentimes been this contradiction, both at the time of offertory, but also at reception of the Eucharist, where there is this weird human need that's oftentimes driven by well-meaning music ministers, well-meaning pastors, well-meaning people, that silence that you just described, that silence where we've just received Jesus, that divine silence, that it's our opportunity to say, Lord, you've now entered into me. Please transform me. Take seed in me and transform me and bear great fruit, that we feel the need to make it, to deafen that silence or to eliminate that silence by having so much of a cacophony of music and sound and motion that it makes it impossible to go into that area. It's almost as if if we do try to go into prayer, that people are right next to us just flashing their hands trying to distract us, and that's what the music sometimes does. And so even before we started to go to the TLM, before I realized how beautiful that moment was, that silence that we are afforded when we do receive the Eucharist in that way, I never, even before we started receiving, I was always frustrated. That was one of the things I would walk out of Mass frustrated by. It's like, I so desperately need that silent reception of Jesus in that moment. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I love the veiling is just a very concrete, physical reenactment of that tradition in my mind. And I feel like I wish everybody had their own little tent that they could go into, just sort of like a cone of silence. I feel like it's my own little cone of silence with the veil, and it feels private. I find myself going into very deeper prayer and meditation, and so much so that I lose track of time, and I realize I will open up my curtain of my veil to see, have we advanced to the next part of the Mass? So I want to make sure I participate in that. And then I just come out of my little, and I feel it. I feel the change. I feel like I've walked out of a very, very special place when I open up my own veil and come back to the community, the laity of being in Mass. And it's just a really neat feeling. And I shared it with Lily, and she immediately loved what I was saying. And now Lily is closing her veil after she receives Jesus and just sort of going into a deep meditative place with our Lord. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
very cool.
So maybe you can do it too.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
The topic of wisdom. When you hear wisdom, and I oftentimes it gets mixed up in the idea of understanding, wisdom, knowledge, right? It's like, well, which is which, right? And what is what?
Yes.
Do you have a clear definition
Yes.
of wisdom? How do you describe
Yes.
wisdom?
Wisdom is knowledge applied.
Wisdom is knowledge applied. Okay, so let's see how close that is to what the Catechism says. So if I look in the glossary at the back of the Catechism, wisdom is a spiritual gift which enables one to know the purpose and plan of God. one of the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit. Wisdom is also the name of one of the books of the Old Testament. So a spiritual gift which enables one to know the purpose and plan of God. Would you say that's knowledge applied?
It can be. The reason why I'm able to answer your question so quickly is because a few years back, I attended a Great Adventure Bible study series where Jeff Cavins was the host of that. And I remember very clearly him providing that definition. And it was so easy to retain it and hold on to it. And I was just like, oh, it's so logical. I mean, once you have attained the knowledge, you have to know when to use it. And that's part of what wisdom is. It's part of the discernment process. And so they are 2 separate entities. Knowledge and wisdom are separate because you can have all the knowledge in the world and still be an idiot, right? You just because you have it doesn't mean you have wisdom.
I know a whole lot of smart atheists.
Exactly.
Right?
So it's knowing when to apply it. That's the other side of it. That's what you want to get to. That's where wisdom can grow, is knowing when to use the knowledge you have.
So in the last year, my understanding of wisdom has been transformed. And what I think is super critical, and this is going to be one of the things that we'll be focusing on with School of Mary, and it's actually a course I hope to develop with School of Mary, is on wisdom. But wisdom is there's actually 2 different definitions that can be given to it. There's the wisdom as you just described it, which I think is our common understanding of wisdom, and with slight, different definitions, such as what the Catechism says of understanding God's will and then applying what it takes to make God's will happen. That's how I would kind of transform Jeff Cavins' statement in that regards. This week, I have found it very providential that a lot of the readings in the Liturgy of the Hours have been from Proverbs, but also a lot of discourses and treatises from bishops and saints and others in regards to understanding wisdom. My understanding of wisdom has been transformed in the last year by diving into a lesser-known work from St. Louis Marie de Montfort, our dear friend. And I've started to, in my writings, I've started referring to him as our dear friend St. Louis Marie de Montfort. And I thought you were going to grab a. You want to get that out of the way? Go ahead and show that. Yeah. Our buddy Mac made this on
Look
his.
Look at this. This is awesome, guys.
So our friend Mac, and if you're listening to this, you can't see it, but Mac basically found an image of an icon of St. Louis Marie de Montfort, and he has a CNC wood burner thing, and he actually was able to make a wood burned icon of St. Louis Marie de Montfort. So that's going to make its way on the wall here eventually. I'm working very diligently trying to figure out how to fill in the blank space on the wall behind us. I've stopped moving the TV in case you didn't realize it.
You got some cool shadows going on back there.
But those shadows will be on the images too. So it's so I have some images back there already framed and ready to go, but I'm looking for a few other things. I thought you were going to grab the statue there, but St. Louis Marie de Montfort, he himself would tell you that his book, True Devotion to Mary, is very, very important. And it is. It's one of his most important things that he's ever done. And that's the thing that most people know about. And many popes and saints and others have talked about that book, True Devotion, and how life-changing it is. St. Louis Marie de Montfort would tell you that there's a book that he wrote that was more important than True Devotion. And that's the book that's called The Love of Eternal Wisdom. And the editors of this book, in the beginning of it, actually talk about the importance of this. And it says in this little book, Love of Eternal Wisdom, St. Louis Marie de Montfort gives us a valuable abridgment of his spirituality, which can be summed up in the words of St. Paul, Christ living in us. That's what this book is about, Christ living in us. The love of eternal wisdom, my definition of wisdom, the eternal wisdom is actually Jesus. And so now we have one word meaning 2 different things, right? Very much as you said, wisdom is applying knowledge to what, to figuring out the will of God. But we also know that the eternal wisdom is Jesus Christ, and that we must do, as St. Louis Marie de Montfort talks about, we must do whatever it takes for us to possess eternal wisdom. That means to possess Jesus.
Well, is that our new catchphrase at the end of the show? Do whatever it takes to possess eternal wisdom?
Well, that holiness and everything else ties up into that. But again, all these readings and everything else. And as I have been studying this little tiny book for the past year and taking a long time and getting through it and the underlining and trying to process, number one, what's a goofball like me even doing, considering teaching something on this, but it's not being done. I desperately feel like it needs to be done. This needs to be better known. This book, The Love of Eternal Wisdom, needs to be better known, and we need to be diving into it. And I can imagine I'm going to read this dozens of times before I die, and I'm never going to even scratch the surface well enough to dive into this. But he talks about different things. This is basically about union with Jesus. This is Christ living in us and our possessing Christ, who is the love of eternal wisdom. That's kind of how I have been able to bring this down. And so what I want to be able to do is, because St. Louis Marie de Montfort's words can be oftentimes very difficult to understand, but I think that they are critically important. I think that we need to be able to take the time to dive into these things, but I want to be able to share eternal wisdom in the modern world. I want to be able to share this eternal wisdom, Jesus Christ, in today's world. So this is my intent through School of Mary more formally, is to be able to go through this book chapter by chapter, part by part, and break it open in many of the ways that we've done with catechism class, and which we also plan on continuing. But this idea of wisdom, and to be able to understand this, well, how do we have Christ living in us? Well, that's the true devotion. True devotion is the easiest way for us to possess Jesus Christ. And so St. Louis Marie de Montfort would say that this book is absolutely the predecessor to true devotion. And in fact, the last chapter of this book has the outline of total consecration, of true devotion. But this book's purpose is helping us to understand, if we say true devotion or total consecration to Jesus through Mary, we don't fully understand what that means. We are trying to consecrate ourselves to Jesus through Mary so that we may possess the eternal wisdom of Jesus Christ, that we may possess Jesus Christ himself in our lives. And so this idea of this book, of the love of eternal wisdom, it's our love of Jesus Christ, as well as the love of Jesus Christ, the eternal wisdom for us. So it's a lot of dual meanings in things, the two meanings of wisdom, the two meanings of eternal wisdom, the two meanings of loving eternal wisdom, the love of eternal wisdom, the love that we have is the love coming back. But this perfect Christian life, which is the love of eternal wisdom, can be brought about by an ardent desire, continual prayer, universal mortification, and a tender, true devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary, which is the surest, easiest, and quickest way to reaching Jesus. So this has been the focus of most of my prayer and attention over the last year or so, as we've been developing a School of Mary and trying to figure out what is it that God is asking us to do. All right, so I've been asking for wisdom to have that better understanding. In the meantime, it seems like everywhere I go, St. Louis Marie de Montfort's words are just constantly following me. And that's why I literally have started to refer to him, even in my journal. I call him my dear friend, Father de Montfort. I mean, he's my dear friend. I feel like he's pulling something out of us. And then the idea of wisdom keeps popping up in other areas. And so I want to talk about this briefly. It's only this understanding of wisdom being not one but two different things that we talk about: the definition of wisdom in our own lives, the gift of the Holy Spirit, as well as the eternal wisdom being Jesus Christ. I'm seeing evidence of that second definition of eternal wisdom being Jesus Christ more and more in Scripture and in other writings, and particularly as I'm reading through Proverbs and right now, that I'm just seeing it left and right. I'm just kind of blown away by how much wisdom is in there, but it's not wisdom of knowledge. It's wisdom that is Jesus Christ. Proverbs written in the Old Testament, so it's a type of Jesus Christ that we're seeing in here. But there's a discourse against the Arians by Saint Athanasius, and he wrote, "The only begotten Son," right here it says, "the only begotten Son, the wisdom of God." So Jesus is the wisdom of God, right? Created the entire universe. Scripture says, "You have made all things by your wisdom, and the earth is full of your creatures." But wisdom, that's Jesus Christ. Wisdom, so there's Saint Athanasius saying it right there. And then today there was a great reading from Saint Augustine talking about the first letter of John. And John's Gospels and his readings keep coming up on our conversations. But he talks about, we have been promised that we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. By these words, the tongue has done its best. Now we must apply the meditation of the heart. And he says there's no way that we can actually be able to have the level of understanding and meditation that St. John has. We just can't. This is St. Augustine saying this, right? But we have received, he says, as John has told us, an anointing by the Holy One, which teaches us inwardly more than our tongue can speak. Let us turn to this source of knowledge, and because at present you cannot see, make it your business to desire the divine vision. So what's the divine vision? To understand Jesus Christ, to possess eternal wisdom, to possess Jesus Christ. He says the entire life of a good Christian is in fact an exercise of holy desire. We should have that desire. We should pray for that desire. Holy Spirit, give me more desire to possess eternal wisdom. You do not yet see what you long for, but the very act of desiring prepares you so that when he comes, you may see and are utterly satisfied. Now, it's great. A great thing that St. Augustine goes on to explain in this particular letter. You know, we oftentimes hear that scripture, and it's a perplexing scripture of you never put new wine in old wineskins or old wine in new wine, it'll burst or whatever, right? Well, St. Augustine does something similar here. He talks about if you have a holder or a container and you look at it and you know it will only contain a certain amount. So what do? Well, it's like, well, I'm going to take this bag and I'm going to kind of stretch it. I sometimes do it when I haven't been watching my figure and I have to stretch out my shirt before I put it on. You get the jeans out of the dryer. What do? I'm just going to stretch them a little bit so that you can fit more than you know will fit in those jeans, right? And so when I read St. Augustine this morning, it kind of made me laugh about that. It's just you set about stretching your sack or wineskin or whatever it is, blue jeans. Why? Because you know the quantity you will have to put in it, and your eyes tell you there's not enough room. I don't think I can wear those jeans, right? But
I'm gonna anyway.
But I'm gonna
lie to myself.
By stretching it, therefore, this is St. Augustine telling you that you can wear those jeans. Okay, you increase the capacity of the sack or jeans, and this is how God deals with us. And let's get serious again for a second. Listen to this. This is how God deals with us. This is how God He's trying to stretch us simply by making us wait. He increases our desire. Dear Lord Jesus, when will you come back? Right? When will you be here? When will this happen? When will that happen? You know, I'm asking for great. He's enlarging our capacity of our soul, making it able to receive what it is to be given to us. And so then he talks about St. Paul, and St. Paul talks about he doesn't use the word stretching, right? But he says, not that I've already obtained this, St. Paul said, or am made perfect. Brethren, I do not consider that I have already obtained it. So if you've not already obtained it, St. Augustine says, you know, what are you doing in this life? Well, St. Paul says, this one thing I do, forgetting what lies behind and stretching forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the prize to which I am called in this life. And so, you know, oftentimes I find myself praying, give me more wisdom. God is stretching me so that I can have at some point the capacity to take on what it is that he actually wants to give us. I think about, you know, things that I prayed about years ago and how faithful God is. But I think about 23 years ago and I wrote a novel and I'm like, please, you know, God, make this novel be published. And I think about 23 years of the amount of growth and anger and stress and all these other things I went through so that I can be more conformed to the will of God, because I would throw away 10 completed novels to have School of Mary be the success that I think it's going to be able to help people to draw closer and consecrate themselves to Jesus through Mary, and to have truly an entire rosary army of people on fire for praying their rosary, but also having this goal of possessing eternal wisdom, to possess Jesus Christ, to completely transform their own personal lives and that of their family. And that could not, that mindset could not be possible. That mindset could not be possible if God was not spending this time over sometimes years or decades to stretch us to have a greater capacity to receive those things. And I like how you were just giving me the radio signals that we used to use when we were on radio, and when we were on Sirius XM, we had all these hand signals that we gave. It's like when the other person was ready to talk or pick it. And so I appreciate you you can still put the finger up, but now we do the thing that if you're watching it, we don't want you to see this. We touch each other's knees.
Yes, we like touch each other's legs.
So you can be looking for that in future episodes. If you see our hands going under the table, it means stop talking. I have something to say that's more important than what you're saying.
Well, the way that you phrased it, so that we can have the ability to possess the eternal wisdom of Christ, that immediately made me think of Mary, who did literally possess God in his fullness in her. So which is why we want to model ourselves after her, because she was fully human and had the capacity by God to do it.
Yep, that's spot on.
Which is very, very beautiful to me. And I just, I loved hearing about the differences of eternal wisdom, which is something that we should be desiring to possess it. But what I found more often, what we, especially in the last, 50 years or so, what we have as a culture have seemingly spent our energies in desiring is knowledge.
Yeah, sure.
How to do this. Google is right there giving us information. So we are very quick to want to possess that. And yet we're not growing in wisdom.
Right.
We think it's information, but sometimes we justify it as, but I want to grow in knowledge. And so we mix our own things up, I think, about wanting this knowledge, but is it eternal wisdom?
And just now as we're talking, I kind of am having the realization that even though I said that those two ideas of wisdom are separate, they're not, right? Because ultimately, if wisdom, as the Catechism talks about, is applying knowledge to your life, right? That's how you described it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I added what the Catechism says, so that we may do the will of God. Well, ultimately, the will of God is what? That we would die to ourselves so that we be risen with Christ, that we might become like Christ. That's the will of God. That's to be able to do that, to be like Christ, we must possess what? Eternal wisdom. What is eternal wisdom? It's not what, it's a who. We must possess Jesus Christ. So the two really are connected close together.
The 1962 Daily Missal, that we both have a copy of this, in the first 20 or so pages of that particular book, it's like a refresher on the tenets of Catholicism in there. And one of the explanations that was so beautifully written was we all, like man, will return to Christ. And so there's this idea that we come from him, we go out and live our life, and then we go back.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you're throwing a ball up against a wall. You throw it away, then boom, boom, it comes right back to your hand. Like that's our souls. We kind of come from him, we have our earthly pilgrimage, and the goal is to return fully back to him, the source. And that's hopefully in heaven. And that's the goal, is to end up there and not anywhere else. But purgatory, okay, yes, that's good, because you're going to go to heaven after that. The goal is to go back to Christ. And so I love this. This is beautiful.
Well, put on your headphones. We're going to do an experiment, Jennifer. As we said last week, if you wanted to send in feedback, as always, you could just record your audio and send it to us, feedback@gregandjennifer.com.
And what is feedback? What do you mean by that?
Well, feedback could be, that's a great question. Feedback could be like if you want to respond. So in a moment, we'll also play some audio in regards to our conversation on old classic movies, right? And some people chimed in on that. But if you want to provide additional input on a particular topic that we're talking about, and say yes, and here's something else. And so, for example, earlier when I said with the rosary, what's a creative way that you pray the rosary? That would be feedback that you would, you could record and send us audio for it. But I threw out the challenge in the last episode that now that we are dual broadcasting, we're doing both the podcast audio as we've always done, and we're also doing the program on YouTube each and every single week, that if you want to send in your video feedback, that we would play that as well. And that could also include questions. If you want us to address a question, you can say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and here's my question, or not even say that. Say, hi, I'm so-and-so. Greg and Jennifer, what do you think about blah, 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 blah? I look forward to your answer. Send that to us, and then we can play it. And then it's more interesting, and it makes the video better, right? So I think I have the technology set up, Jennifer. So that we're actually going to be able to watch. We got our first piece of video feedback, and we're going to watch it. And I hope I don't have to edit it too much. I think I'm going to have to, but I hope this all plays together. We will see. This is going to be an experiment. This is our very first piece of video feedback that we're going to be able to play for you.
Hey, Greg and Jennifer. This is Kim B, picking up the challenge to give you guys some feedback and really share the love with as many people as I can on how you have really affected my life throughout numerous episodes. Greg, through your sharing with the therapy, that has led me to jump into therapy myself. I love, Jennifer, what you said about the Restore book. I love Sister Miriam, and I heard one of your first episodes after y'all were finishing up with that. So when I heard you bring it back up again, I'm like, oh, yes, I'm going to add that to my Lent. I also can't wait until we start with the School of Mary, and I'm going to be reconsecrating myself, going through the consecration, but going deeper, because I did it a long, long, long time ago. And it was great, but I'm in a different place in my life now, and really digging deeper into St. Louis de Montfort's writings and everything. So I'm really, really, really excited about taking that challenge and really going deeper. And, you were talking so much about Lent and everything, and what am I going to be doing, and really praying the rosary consistently and with a deeper sense of meditation on where I am in my life is really what I want to do. Greg, I'm going to give a shout out to you because you had given me the counseling, I'll call that, because you are a wise man, and I'm wanting to go deeper into the scriptures, and I was looking for a good commentary, and like you said, the Gospel of John. So I've gotten that, and that's part of my Lenten reading that I will be doing also. I just want you guys to know that everything you do, it impacts so many people in different ways. And, I know you guys get all kinds of feedback and everything, but, you touch people in just different ways, and because you're so real. And I'm just so thankful. I look forward to Mondays. I love Sundays because I'm receiving our Lord. But I really look forward to Mondays because that's when your podcast drops. Have a great day.
Wow. We're like second place after Jesus.
Oh, I don't like that. Don't say it like that.
I know.
So thank you for that. That was awesome. Kim, thank you for being the first guinea pig and sending in video feedback. See how easy that was?
Yes, she made it look very easy.
Now, if you do send in audio or video, please, I do implore you, please keep it to like 2.5 minutes or less. That helps me in terms of preparing for the program and having something to put up there. So please, you don't have to make it fancy. You could just send me the raw stuff, but just try to keep it underneath that, and we'll work from there. So we also got a lot of audio feedback and email feedback about the topic last week. We watched Roman Holiday, and then we made some comments about Breakfast at Tiffany's. Apparently, people disagreed with our assessment on that. But we'll start first with some feedback from our friend Mary.
Hello, Greg and Jennifer. This is Mary from Queens. Just a couple of movie recommendations because in our family we have Turner Classic Movies, and it's almost always on in some capacity or another. We're just really big into old movies. Audrey Hepburn, you can't go wrong. Sabrina, that is with Humphrey Bogart in it. It is really fun, lovely, nice romantic comedy. Katharine Hepburn is somebody else you want to look out for. Wonderful actress from the 30s. My favorite movie is Woman of the Year with Spencer Tracy. Oh, what a great movie. You want to see like a real movie about two very strong-willed people who love each other and have to learn how to have a marriage together. It's funny. It is, I guess you want to call it feminist, though that's kind of a lame term for that movie. It's just two people who love each other and are likable, charming, interesting people, and they just have to learn how to be married. And I think it's such a mature movie about marriage. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about there. It's a really wonderful movie. And Bringing Up Baby with Katharine Hepburn is a hilariously funny movie. Also a real screwball comedy romantic with Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. If you don't have like the Turner Classic Movie extension, maybe you should look into getting it via one of the streaming whatever the heck. It's worth it because what it is you don't just get the movie, you get like a host, particularly like when they have movies on at like 8 o'clock on Friday night, get like a context for the movie. So like Breakfast at Tiffany's, it's interesting, Greg, that you talked about how you just didn't really understand it, didn't understand what's going on. But because of censorship, there wasn't a lot of stuff that there were things they just could not say in the movies. So things were in code. Now the racism was pretty overt, but that was back then. You can look up, various commentaries and they'll tell you exactly what it was code for relationships. And so that's something to be aware of in older movies because of the Hays Code. Everything that people do now, they did back then. It's just that they had a different way of talking about it. And so they would make remarks or come at it kind of in slant ways. And if you understand the code, you kind of get it. And Jennifer, another really good movie, it's an adventure movie. It's called The African Queen. It's with Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn. Oh, and it's a wonderful movie. It's about these two very headstrong people on a boat down a river in Africa in World War I, and they want to fight Germans, and they fall in love, and it's great. Lots of mosquitoes, though. As always, your struggles and your problems are very interesting to me. God bless.
I sometimes wonder if we've been more influenced by older movies than we realize. It's sort of like when she talks about speaking in code and that kind of thing. That's what we would refer to as euphemisms, right? It's like, oh my, what are you doing here? Well, I decided to come over here to see if I could help you move any furniture. It's like, whoa, I don't need any help moving furniture. I just stopped seeing a furniture mover. It's like,
I just moved a bunch of furniture. This is extra furniture moving. It's not necessary.
It's like, who are you? I'm the furniture mover. Oh, I thought I was the. So suddenly it's like, yeah, you could watch these old movies with all sorts of different codes.
Thank you so much, Mary, for these great title recommendations. I am very much looking forward to watching them with Lily. Because that's what I want to do.
Well, and some of these I would watch as well.
You would?
Yeah, a few of them that she mentioned I would watch. I do like Katharine Hepburn. I mean, a movie that I do love. I get suckered into watching it, but the language is just terrible. It's on Golden Pond. I loved her in that with Henry Fonda and
that was my first
exposure. Oh, sure.
Movie.
I think for a lot of people our age, that probably was.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. It's just, boy, the language is just horrendous in that. Our friend Hans, longtime listener, he suggested My Man Godfrey, starring William Powell and Carol Lombard from 1936. He says, I don't know where it's found these days, but I got a DVD of it years ago. So My Man Godfrey. Jenny sent you a direct message on her Discord. Do you remember what those movies were?
No, but I think Bringing Up Baby was one of them because that sounded very familiar to me after I heard Mary talk about it. It's like, I think Jenny also had that same one. And she also mentioned Katharine Hepburn movies. And also, I think, what's the dancing couple? Bing Crosby.
Yeah.
Maybe was on there. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, if you want to look it up, we also got an email from Hannah who made some suggestions. So if you have a pen and paper and you want to write down some classic musicals and dramas, and it was funny because she sent this in 2 emails. And she apologized. She said she was trying to type in nurse at the same time, so she was having difficulty. And what's funny is the nursing must have, I don't know what was happening, because her spelling and typing got worse as the email went on. It's like all of the movies were spelled correctly, but at the end of it, it was like the musicals have some very nice romancy movies. I like them all lot as a 10, and they've been hit with. She's just. So
you get the gist.
I thought your email was very, very funny, Hannah. But she said for musicals, Singing in the Rain, which I think I've seen. Oklahoma, 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. I remember seeing that. Newsies, we watched that one time. I know Catherine Barron loves that one. We had a DVD of that at one point, and I've always seen that once. What's his name? Christian Bale was in that movie. My Fair Lady with Audrey Hepburn. Kiss Me Kate, isn't Kiss Me Kate based off of Taming of the Shrew? I think it is.
Oh, maybe so.
Okay. The King and I, Fiddler on the Roof, There's No Business Like Show Business, Brigadoon, and American in Paris. I have not seen more than half of those movies. Dramas, the 90s version of Pride and Prejudice with Colin Firth, 6 hours long but worth it. Sense and Sensibility with Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet. Mansfield Park, that sounds familiar. I think Mansfield Park, was that maybe I'm confusing it, but I want to say it was kind of a Downton Abbey-ish type of a movie. Emma with Gwyneth Paltrow, Gone with the Wind, which you and Lily watched last year, The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston. We got a story about that, and Much Ado About Nothing with Emma Thompson. The Ten Commandments, I could probably go the rest of my life without watching that one ever again. It's not because it's a bad movie. Our son Sam, when he was little, and if I could find a picture of this, I'll put this up, because Sam was obsessed with that movie. He went through a period of time where I feel like every time I walked in the room, that woman was on the screen going, Moses, Moses, Moses. It's like
her acting was
there was a period,
over the top.
There was a period in our lives as parents of young children where I am not. That was one of the movies, because it was a safe movie for the kids to watch, you know. And Sammy loved it, and so we had no issue just letting that play constantly. So what do you got?
Okay, from Jenny, she wanted to recommend movies with Gene Kelly and a movie called On the Town as a fun movie to watch. Also, Bringing Up Baby, very hilarious. I've never seen it, so I'm looking forward to checking out that one for sure. She also enjoys movies with Alice Faye, Betty Grable, and Sonia Henney. And so those are more like actresses' names to look for, and just watch some of the movies that they were in. And so we've got quite a bit of viewing ahead of us.
And there was a couple of comments also, and I didn't get a chance to respond to them over on the actual YouTube video for last week's show. And I apologize, I don't remember who said this, but someone recommended The Bells of St. Mary's with Bing Crosby.
Yeah,
and
that's great.
Anne Bancroft, was she the one? Who played the nun in that? Which is a great movie as well. I do love that one, The Bells of St. Mary's. We had that at one point. Don't know what happened to it. So that's it for this week. We have a few other topics. We'll save it for next week. This is a jam-packed program already. Spring! Your hair just went kabooey as you took off your headphones. Thank you to all of you who have left comments, whether it be over at YouTube or left reviews on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever it's called now, who have basically helped get the word out about what we're trying to do. Thank you to all of you who have gone over and started watching these videos. I sent out an email on Monday night. I might do this again and encourage people, if you're looking for an alternative to watching, you know, non-old movies, if you're just tired of whatever's out there, if you're not subscribed to Turner Classic Movies apparently, and you want to watch something different, well, if you can stream YouTube to your TV, you could watch this program every week on YouTube. YouTube.com/Rosary Army is the direct channel for all of Rosary Army's videos, our live streams of rosaries and that kind of thing. And if you go over there, make sure that you subscribe to the program, that you're also clicking the like button and the little thumbs up right, as well as the notifications, the bell. And if you click the bell, then you actually get notified every time you go into YouTube when we've updated or added something new. So also, if you visit Rosary Army's website, we'd love to send you a free rosary. Our hope and goal is to get everyone praying a rosary every single day. If you sign up anywhere on the website, including over at schoolofmary.com, you'll be added to our newsletter list, and we are trying our best to send out helpful, motivational, non-salesy stuff to you that actually help you grow in your faith each and every week. So go over to schoolofmary.com. That's probably the easiest way right now. Sign up for the waiting list for School of Mary so you're notified when the first programs are available, and you'll also get other motivational stuff to help you in your faith life. So keep doing whatever it takes to pray your rosary every single day, right? As we're entering into the Lenten period, you may already be in Lent by the time you're watching this. Try making that be one of your Lenten exercises, to add the rosary to your daily prayer practice. I can guarantee you that if you can pray your rosary every single day, you will start having more peace in your life. As someone who has a tremendous amount of turmoil, most of it is self-created over the course of his life, the rosary truly is something that I believe has saved my life in more ways than one. And it is something that brings great miracles, great peace, and great healing into our lives, because we're meditating on the life of Jesus Christ, who is the ultimate physician and our Savior. So pray your rosary. Do whatever it takes. Pray your rosary today.
Would you say that you would be grabbing for eternal wisdom when you pray your rosary?
Sure,
that is a way to tether yourself
this is
to
going to be
eternal wisdom?
Jennifer's new thing. She's going to find a way of working in eternal wisdom into the
to the end. Well, let's sing us out, Greg.
All right.
Play us out.
I'm not gonna sing you out. Pray your rosary, pray your rosary, pray your rosary. All right.
Right.
And do whatever it takes. You say
do whatever it takes to be holy and acquire eternal wisdom, which is Jesus.
Thanks for hanging out with us. Talk to you soon. God bless.
Bye.